You're listening to Good Shepherd Catholic Radio Eucharistic Revival Podcast. I'm Lucian Leone, and along with my regular co-host, Mojo, Dr. Robert Moore Jumanville.
Dr. Leone.
Well, thank you for that. I always appreciate that. We have as our special guest today, David Barker. And David, David wears many hats. I got to know David because of my work with Good Shepherd Catholic Radio and the work that he does there. But, as I've got to know David a little bit, I thought, wow, you've got an amazing story, and we really need to get you on this podcast. And he graciously agreed. So welcome, David.
It's nice to have some young people on the podcast.
Yes, it is. And that's really our ulterior motive, is to start to hopefully produce some content that younger people than us actually find engaging and interesting.
Yeah,
So,
I hope I'm not. Tasked with that sole responsibility because everybody's trying to get younger. But thank you for having me on.
well, it's so good to have you, and I'd love to start if you could just kind of give us the moderately short version of your kind of background and where you grew up and when you became a Catholic and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, grew up in South Lyon, Michigan, about 10 minutes north of Ann Arbor. Did not grow up religious, sort of a faint Christian feeling in the background, of the home. But no, it wasn't family wasn't a practicing religious family. Been with my wife. We're high school sweethearts. So we've been together for 16 years.
This is where all of the audience goes, oh.
Yes.
That's great. No, that's great.
Yeah. We've got 2 young boys. We've got a daughter on the way.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I work here in Jackson now as a digital project manager at JTV. So that means making websites and doing digital advertising and marketing, a little graphic design, a little editing now, with Good Shepherd being a client, a happy client. And that's about it. I was just brought into the Catholic faith this past year, so was baptized at the Easter Vigil this year in 2023. That's about me in a nutshell right now.
What high school and what did you do after high school?
So South Lyon, went to high school in South Lyon. After that, kind of bounced around the community college scene for a while until I decided, finally upon technology management degree. So went to Washtenaw and then Eastern for that. My wife went to U of M. And then she got a job at Consumers Energy here in Jackson, and that's what brought both of us out here. I sort of just followed her out, and found my way over at JTV, and I've been there for 7 years, I think. And it's been
good time.
I mean, it's been a bunch of fun.
Yeah, JTV looks like so much fun.
Yeah, there really is. Yeah. They're great people over there,
the
Hawley family, and there's all these very deep connections to Lumen Christi and the Catholic community. It's really a deep place.
Yeah, and that's what makes work really wonderful and worthwhile, is when you're working with good people. So.
No, I mean there's been. If there were any change, to the ownership, to the family, any significant changes to the staff, I would have to rethink, some things, because the people over there make all the difference. The work that we do, on a daily basis for the Jackson community, just super proud to live in a place where my work, I can just drive all over the town and just kind of see, I do their website. We do sales for them. We do a project for them. We cover this high school. We cover that church event,
That's great.
Things like that. So I love it. I love Jackson, love JTV, love what I'm doing.
Well, David, I would love for you to talk a little bit about, because it's fairly unusual for a guy in his, early 30s
33.
To just all of a sudden decide who's not. It sounds like you didn't come from a very strong Christian home. What was your motivation to say, there's something about this Christianity thing broadly and this Catholic thing specifically that really brought you in?
Yeah, the motivation, it was more of a pull than a push. Really, throughout my 20s, I kind of began noticing that I would just sort of get fascinated with things. I just had like hobby after hobby, and I was asking, just finding interest at every turn. I'd pick up woodworking, I'd pick up hunting, I'd pick up gardening, I'd pick up working with motors and like mechanics. So I was always kind of like, I'd get fixated on things. It's kind of part of my personality, I guess. And I began noticing that maybe I was taking these interests more seriously than even other people I knew that had them. But they would come and go. And then I started, I'm not sure what the catalyst was really, that got me into the whole religion, Christianity, Catholicism in general. Maybe it was philosophical, maybe it was political. I just began noticing maybe a lot of the divisiveness that was in the air, that has been in the air for some time now. Began feeling disconnected, began feeling like I'm supposed to be at odds with people around me that I don't feel at odds with.
You don't hate anybody. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, all this fighting, and I just I didn't quite understand it. But for whatever reason, the religion started to emerge. It started to become clear that, well, if we can elevate a little bit outside of our particular differences, then there's common ground. I sort of felt like there's more commonly shared space the higher we go. I remember having that thought kind of earlier on. And then I just kind of followed it for whatever reason, just kind of kept being called, into that direction. And this is something that I've gotten fixated on or fascinated with, interested in for, I would say, maybe 3 years ago. And I know that I'm not going to be leaving this behind, kind of like I have with other hobbies or interests. This is something that's going to stick. I've found truth, healing, fellowship through it, and I know that there's more there. So that's kind of the way that I stumbled.
I like the
into
way
it.
you said that something about if elevated.
Yeah.
There's some quote, and I think maybe more than one person has said this, but it's sort of like the closer we get to God, the closer we get to each other.
Mm-hmm.
In some sense, it's like if you think of a cone going up or a pyramid, then it's like the closer we move toward the truth, I guess, then the closer it is actually we are able to communicate in love or something.
Yeah, there's, the symbolism that's embedded in the language, right? And the effort that you can see on display, reading the Bible, where these people, they're trying to communicate the sense that there is the truth there, and it's in Catholicism, Christianity, faith broadly, I guess there's the word mystery is used kind of pretty commonly. There's that symbolism, there's that mystery there where it's you're like you said, the higher we get, it's like that pyramid, there's shared space, there's oneness, that the higher we get.
Can I ask you a question, David, about your particular experience? Because you said that you didn't really come from a religious background, and this is just I was talking to my daughter, who had a friend who was vaguely Protestant, so not not unfamiliar with Christianity, but went to Mass with them on Easter. And his response was, I just think that that there's got to be something simpler than this, that this is so complex that nobody could understand. Like there's so many things going on in the Mass that, and I thought, I guess if I were a non-Christian, that would probably be my experience too. Like, what just happened, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, your experience of the Mass, you didn't feel like it was too off-putting or too like esoteric, remote, or anything like that, or do you just have to did it take time?
You know, I do think that there's something to that person's feeling of the complexity versus simplicity. And you know, I've heard of God, right? If I were to sort of step away from the question of the Mass specifically and talk about just God, I've heard of God, some of his attributes or him generally be described as a sort of the divine simplicity, wherein God, he's one thing, but he's all things, right? So to that person's point of, you know, it's got to be simpler than this. If I were to try to evangelize, right, I would meet him where he's at and say, the sense that you have about that simplicity, right? You might want to go in this direction and talk about God's divine simplicity. But to jump back into the Mass specifically, I would say that, you know, as I've kind of come to enter the faith and understand what even religion is, it's kind of the way that we relate to the infinite. It's kind of the way that that we're lucky enough to have some sort of relationship with that eternal, infinite source, you know, of all things. Yeah. So the fact that the Mass might be a little complicated and might have within it all of these ancient, hard to understand rites and rituals, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't really turn me off to it, but it's just because I've come to understand more. You know, so if there's, you know, something that could quell that concern or that feeling, might just be a deeper understanding, you know, because all those rites and rituals, you know, they're very old and they all mean something. And it's just our effort to relate, you know, to mirror, to match, to come into alignment with or rhythm, you know, with, you know, everything that we've got to learn. Yeah.
Well, you know, there's so much there I'd love to chat about, but most specifically, especially since the broad topic of these podcasts is the Eucharist and Eucharistic revival, I would love to get some of your thoughts as a new Catholic on how the Catholic teaching on the Eucharist was either attractive or possibly somewhat difficult in terms of your deciding if being a Catholic was something you wanted to pursue.
It's still, you know, my faith is, you know, it's got to be the most important, you know, my favorite thing about my life right now is my faith. The most beguiling thing probably will always be the Eucharist. Yeah. It's still the most... It's the most alarming thing that I can point to in our faith. The most challenging thing that I can point to in the Catholic faith is the Eucharist. But it's the most illuminating. You know, as I've come to just the littlest bit of progress that you can make in understanding it, or the little bit of penetration that it has, you know, on your mind or your heart or your soul, it just makes, the biggest of differences. You know, and my guy, my spiritual master or whatever is, Bishop Barron, Word on Fire, and I mean he kind of sums it up with, I think it was a Vatican II quote. It's the source and summit, right, of the Christian faith. And going back to that symbolism too, you know, the symbolism in the language itself, the summit, right? So it's the center. it's the highest. And from that point, you have access to so much around you, so much below you. There's so much underneath you at that point of the Eucharist. And it has within it meal. It has within it sacrifice. It has within it divinization. It has within it the authority of the church to, that moment of transubstantiation. The word that happens there. I mean, it's the most dense thing I can think of is the Eucharist.
Yeah, I've thought about this before that, and it came from some Old Testament scholars who are Christian in around the turn of the 20th century, who would say that you can find Christ pretty much in every verse of Scripture. So like all Scripture is Christological, and I think you can actually make a pretty good case for that. And then if that's the case, then you could say all Scripture is reflective of Eucharist in some sense, which is that's the other way to say it. Like it's just like so much depth in Eucharist that and the Scriptures and the tradition have been leading up to this for millennium. So.
Yeah. I mean, it starts with Eden. I mean, like if you really wanted to follow the themes or follow the motifs or the concepts within it, the fruit. I mean, God says eat of all the fruit of the tree except for the one. But there's eating involved. There's the Passover meal, there's the manna. So the consuming of food, right? And that's a theme that's goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, the creation story. And the sharing, it's God sharing sustenance, sharing nourishment. And in that sharing, too, I find that it just dovetails perfectly with sacrifice, because what is sharing? It's sacrificing. You're going without to share, so you're sacrificing to share. And the sacrifice also, I mean, during the fall, when Adam and Eve become naked, God offers them, if I remember correctly, pelts to cover themselves. Skins. So there's sacrifice. Where do you get the skins? Obviously you can say that He created them, but there's animals that were sacrificed to get those skins. Right. So you can, I mean, again, it's just like this goes all the way back to it's so dense, and the righting of wrongs, right? The wrong that was mistake that was made by Adam and Eve, the sacrifice being made there to right that wrong. That's in there with sacrifice.
I'd like to just highlight for our audience something that you mentioned, just that your mentor was Bishop Barron, and I just want to encourage listeners to think about who over a period of years they might make mentor for them. And it can be somebody who's not living, perhaps even, so maybe a Mother Teresa or a Julian of Norwich or Chesterton or C.S. Lewis. So did you have like mentors living and or in history and books that you followed?
Well, I not probably the same way you did. I mean, in terms of authors, Frank Sheed is probably the author that I most resonated with as a young Catholic. And he and C.S. Lewis, I mean, were the two authors that really, I think, had the biggest impact on me. But I would also have to put out there J.R. Tolkien, just because as I read The Lord of the Rings and kind of started and really kind of almost looked at it, as you kind of say, from a Christological perspective, that really was inspiring to me. So anyway,
The wonderful thing about Bishop Barron is he's still alive.
Exactly, yes.
We could potentially have a conversation with him.
Well, and he's gotten closer to us too. He used to be out in California, and now he's just a hop, skip, and a jump away over in Minnesota.
Right.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, David, because I was thinking not too long ago about how it's kind of neat that like the two leading clerics are Bishop Barron, who's in Minnesota, and Father Mike Schmitz, who's also in Minnesota.
Right.
And then we have, all that's going on at Franciscan University. There's a whole boatload of people down there. There's just a lot happening in the Midwest from a renewal perspective that I think is pretty powerful.
That's great. It's exciting.
Yeah, we actually, even though we may be in flyover country, in a certain sense,
The Holy Spirit
the
doesn't
Holy Spirit is not. He really sees the Midwest as a pretty special place.
Yeah.
So, and you seem to be one of those guys, because Bishop Barron will often talk about, when he started his ministry many years ago at the encouragement of Bishop George, his mentor, who kind of said, do this thing, and get involved with digital media. And he kind of thought, I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's got, I don't know, millions and millions of, and I think people just like you, and it's just inspiring for me to hear. You seem to be one of those people that really have been influenced by his work very directly.
Yeah, it is inspiring, to hear him recount the stories of when, he first started. Yeah, like you said, Cardinal George kind of put him to the task of, what are you doing to evangelize the culture? And yeah, he started out just kind of reviewing movies. I think on YouTube was one of his first opportunities he did, and he had like 100 views and thought he was through the roof over it, right? Yeah. And just sort of kept at it. But I think that the internet and the digital evangelization, it's something that I think the church broadly, parishes, individually, we have yet to really crack into. But I think that, the opportunity is certainly there. The comparison that gets made a lot is the Roman roads. So the digital space, we got to go out. We got to find a way. I know churches are they have many ministers, at individual parishes. But if they're not taking the digital and the social ministry, more seriously, I just think that it's a missed opportunity, because you can communicate, you can preach to so many more people. That's really what it should be, what it should be viewed as an opportunity to preach to the whole connected world. I was brought in, by Bishop Barron, his content online, and just trying to find a way to help. You and I are both at Good Shepherd, helping them out in the different ways that we can. I'm at Queens Parish here in Jackson, helping them out, with their digital, with their social, and I just think that there's more there. There's more opportunity there. The younger generations as well. We're gifted with this opportunity where there's this growing number of disaffiliation among the youth, and we have this technology where we can be in their pockets. So there's something there, right? There's something there. So I think it's more of just an intentional, maybe intent, maybe focus, just fully fleshing out what can come of just more of an effort toward that digital evangelization. Very interested in that. Yeah.
Well, and I'd love you to chat about a little bit your experience with the Rescue Project, because I've also been doing that. I've started a men's group, a Saturday morning men's group. There's just a few of us who get together, and we're watching all of Father Ricardo's Rescue Project videos. But I think that is a perfect example where the whole idea behind the Rescue Project, as you've done it over at Queens, is, and you might not be familiar with it, Mojo, but There are 9 videos that are anywhere from 35 to 50 minutes each. And the whole idea is to get a group of people from the parish together, watch these videos over a course of weeks together, talk about them, and really build, and you start to really build community. And I think your experience so maybe you could just talk about how that's worked at Queens.
Yeah. I mean, it's a, what's it been, 7 weeks, 9 weeks, somewhere around that. But yeah, I mean, it was a great turnout. I think we had 180 people register for the event.
Wow.
I think when Rubber met the road, there was about 150 people that showed up. And it's been great. Every Tuesday night, I've got the teen and young adult table. So I'm a discussion leader or table host. So we go through Father Ricardo's videos. And most of the teens and young adults at my table, all of them are cradle Catholics. Mm-hmm. So they, you and I were talking about this earlier, but they just have so much knowledge and understanding at the ready that they sort of take for granted or just discard. To me, as a new convert, someone new to the faith, I'm still very hungry and very curious. So constantly asking questions, trying to reach an understanding, and they just have these things that they just throw off like it's no big deal. But to me, I'm just like, oh my goodness, like thank you for offering that. But it's been great. I mean, you talk about fellowship, you talk about discussion, just curious minds, exploration, dialogue. It's been wonderful. We just wrapped up last night. It was our last night, and everybody at my table, I've got 7 teens and young adults, and we all exchanged emails, and we're thinking about being the group that starts up the next kind of youth Bible study, youth Bible group over at Queens, or finding a way to kind of keep in contact and keep the momentum going. So it was great.
Yeah, that's great. And what I love about that program specifically, it's a great marriage of digital media, these really highly well-produced videos, and Father Ricardo is a very dynamic, charismatic speaker. But the whole idea is not just to go by yourself and watch the videos, but to watch them and then discuss them. And what I think he does so well is he really focuses on the kerygma, the idea that, the gospel, as we talked about earlier, getting into Catholic theology can be overwhelming when you look at it kind of holistically. But the whole idea behind the Rescue Project that's, I think, so powerful is he basically breaks it down into the first video or two is the fact that God created us. And he talks about the immensity of creation and how amazing God must be to have created this immense universe. And then we fell, that we were in essence, and the word he uses is captured. We were captured by the devil. And he spends a couple of pretty sobering videos talking about what that means. But then the fact that God rescued us, and that's where the name Rescue Project, that he sent his son. And then finally, the fourth key concept is our response. And I love the fact that he's taken really the Christian story very broadly and really made it very digestible. So for any of you out there who might be interested in learning more about the Rescue Project, I think there might be other parishes doing it. I think they might be doing it at St. John's as well.
I think we just finished, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
Father Ricardo was there last week. Yeah.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Okay, good. He's quite another one of these Midwestern guys from Archdiocese of Detroit who's just having an amazing impact.
David, Lucian and I have been talking about for a couple of years now just the problem of technology for young people, and you've seen this too, right? The statistics of depression and cyberbullying and all of these things that have been now kind of highlighted through films like Childhood 2.0, Social Dilemma,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's so positive. It's so comforting to think that is a tool out there, and we can actually use it.
Yeah.
That there's some good that we could, because like you said, they're going to have something going off in their pocket, and if it could be something about the church and about hope and about rescue and about there being a savior, that would be amazing. But one of the things that I want to just ask you as a as a person who's lived this more than we have, but is also capable of actually creating some of this. We've talked about Bishop Barron, Father Schmitz, and Father Ricardo, and we're not in that league, right? It's not like in terms of like their resources and studios and things like that. Do you think there's a market for kind of what local digital media that like people is there anything that we could actually do in Jackson where people would start to follow and actually be challenged?
Yeah, it's a question that I'm compelled to sort of find an answer to one way or the other. I know that Lucian and I, we've spoken about the JTV model, my current workplace, and how over the past 23 years they've dedicated themselves as a local media company, television station, now transitioning over into the digital online space. But they've dedicated themselves to being 100% local content. And it's been 23 years of that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so to your question of, is there anything that we can, sure, we don't have the studio, but I mean, the cost of technology and the cost of digital, if you want to call it broadcasting or digital production in general, it's just fallen through the floor. I mean, you're able to make digital content now. It's so affordable, and it's really just a little bit of attention toward the process, and then any parish, I think, is going to kind of be off and running. So going back to Father Ricardo, that was just a talk. I mean, that the whole Rescued project, for all the good it's done, and I hope that more parishes participate in it. It probably ought to be an annual thing at parishes. That was just him talking, and there's a video recording, and there's some graphic overlays, but that's it.
Yeah.
And that's very doable. So for parishes that are exploring the possibility of digital media and taking the call of evangelizing and being a missionary and forming disciples seriously, that's a way that I think they ought to go. And I know that, Lucian and I are both helping out Good Shepherd sort of find their way, put their feelers out there and seeing what might be doable, might be available for us, but parishes broadly. If we were to cover parish events, it's a very feasible thing. And like I said, there's 180 people registered at Queens for this Rescued project. I don't know what the numbers were at St. John's, but there's...
Yeah, I think they were high too. So it shows the desire is out there, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's. I just. I'm compelled by this too. Just the notion that. I'm listening to Catechism in a year, and I did Bible in the year before that with Father Schmitz, and I've used a lot of YouTube's teaching of his too, and also Bishop Barron's whole Catholicism series and stuff like that. I used a lot of that at Lumen Christi, and just their ability, Father Ricardo, their ability to make the gospel compelling is overused word maybe, but just to make it winsome and desirable and something that I want that. I need some meaning in my life because my life is hard, or my life is now right now purposeless. Anyway, to be able to try to communicate that, which I think, I see this in Lucian. He's sometimes I have to just bring a fire extinguisher because he gets on fire with inspiration and stuff like that.
It's hard not to sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, us locally, we talked about the Midwest with Bishop Barron, Father Mike Schmitz, Father Ricardo. But we're blessed right here in Jackson. We've got the Vicar General, Father Tim McDonald, and he's a star. Watching him, listening to him speak.
And we have such amazing priests in Jackson. I mean, Father Chaz, Father Brian. They're just wonderful. I mean, the priests at St. Mary's, Father Todd and Father Tim over there, and then we are really blessed with some, and it's what I think they are so. Symbolic or representative of the Catholic Church in that their styles are all completely different from each other. Yeah. But you can be fed by all of them in very different ways.
Yeah, I could almost see having a particular question and then just say, okay, we're going to go to 4 of these priests this week and just have 5-7 minutes each or something, and then putting together a YouTube on that. I think that would be tremendously exciting.
Yeah. Outside of their, the similarities with their theological knowledge, I would say that the one common quality with all of our gifted, charismatic local pastors, priests, is their comedy. We have some of the
that
funniest,
is true. We've got some stand-up, don't we?
Wittiest, timeliest,
You haven't had the opportunity to see St. John's Father Chaz, and he'll say, well, it's Father Brian's turn to preach. Father Brian will come out of the vestry and the sacristy, and they're just like stand-up team, they're really funny. They're really clever together.
Yeah, and it helps open up. Sometimes you can feel the weight of some of the gospels, some of the readings, and a little bit of humor will just open it right up.
Right.
Much appreciate that.
Yeah, Christian, stand up. I can hear it coming.
All right, so. Catholics. Okay, so we're gonna have to give this some thought. I like your idea. There is. I think there might be something in all this.
It's like we're thinking. Do you remember Car Talk? Did you ever hear Car Talk?
No.
Okay, it was like an NPR thing or something like that, where it was just 2 brothers,
Two brothers from Boston.
Kind of Jewish or something like that. That's what they sounded like. Maybe I don't know. It sounded like to me like they were
Click and Clack. No, they're Italian. Come on, Ray and whatever Mariazzi. I used to listen to them every Saturday.
Okay. I just thought that since they were such great comedians, so they must have been Jewish. But yeah, okay.
I'm really offended by that, Roberto. As an Italian, as a Sicilian. Anyway.
I didn't know Sicilians had a sense of humor.
Okay, well, I guess there's nothing I can say about that comment. Well, I think there is a lot. David, you really have inspired me to think more about how we can hopefully kind of just really much more strategically think about digital assets and how we can make this podcast and what listeners would want to hear. That's kind of got a local focus. So I guess I'll give an encouragement to anybody listening in the Jackson area. If you've got some thoughts and ideas on things you'd like to hear from our priest or from anybody, or topics you'd like to see addressed that you think we could do well,
or schools,
from the schools, we're doing some things, with like Jack's Facts, but there's a lot of possibilities there. So please feel free to just reach out to me. You can reach me at Lumen Christi or at Jackson Catholic Schools or through Good Shepherd Catholic Radio. Great. Well, thank you, Mojo. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Dr. Leone.
It's been a great conversation.
I take it back. I think Sicilians are funny.
Well, thanks for that.
After they've had their way with you.
After we've had a few beers or some good wine is really the key there. But so you've been listening to Good Shepherd Catholic Radio. This is the Eucharistic Revival Podcast. Thanks for listening.